Hey, I'm Allison from Learning at the Primary Pond. I'm a literacy specialist, and in this video, I'm going to share with you what I think is the secret to getting K2 students to write narratives. If you haven't subscribed to my channel, make sure to hit the subscribe button and then also the little bell to be notified every time I post a new video about teaching literacy in K2. All right, so first of all, what is a narrative? A narrative is a story. It has a beginning, middle, end. There is like some kind of plot, like a problem and a resolution. There's characters, there's some kind of setting, but it's just a story. And that story could be like a, personal narrative where the kids are telling true stories from their own lives, or it could be like realistic fiction, something that could have happened but didn't, or it could be like fairy tale or fantasy. So there's different types of narratives, but what I'm going to share in this video actually applies to all of them. Okay. Now, in one sense, I feel like narrative writing is easy and fun in the sense that kids, like, often they have lots of stories to tell about their own lives. They always want to tell us stories, right? And then a lot of kids like to make up stories too. They like to pretend and play and imagine. So in that sense, I feel like narrative writing is accessible, but in another sense, I feel like it's actually really hard, especially at the K2 level, to get the kids to write stories that are well sequenced, have like a problem and solution, and really like there's something of a plot. If you agree that narrative writing, like getting them to write good stories that have plots, it can be challenging for your students, I want you right now to go in the comments section and type yes. Let me know I'm not alone in that. Okay, so narrative writing can be difficult. Now it's time to share the secret, right? And honestly, the secret is something that you have probably heard before, but there's some special things I want to show you, and it's all in like the implementation of this that I think makes the big difference. So the secret, or my secret, what I found to be really effective is to have kids use some type of graphic organizer to plan their story beforehand. Now, before we go into like the more complicated graphic organizers or the, more robust graphic organizers, I want to talk about what this can be at a very basic level. I will often give my kids literally just a sheet of paper that has boxes for beginning, middle, and end. And I model how to do this before I ever ask them to plan their own stories. But what I'll do is just have them talk with a partner and kind of like brainstorm. And they're supposed to tell their partner, they're pointing to the B. They're not doing anything yet on the paper, but they're explaining what happened in the beginning, the middle, and the end. So they're just like talking about it with a partner. Then they'll go back to their seat. And at this point, they can either draw pictures or they can write some words depending on the grade level and the abilities of the students, and then they have their plan. Now, of course, this doesn't mean that their story is going to turn out great, because sometimes kids will be confused, like, what does the graphic organizer have to do with my story? Even with like kindergartners, they will sometimes fill out a graphic organizer, first graders too, and then you ask them to write a story from it and they like write a completely different story. So there's definitely a learning curve, and I highly, highly, highly recommend modeling how you take a graphic organizer that you've modeled completing with them and very specifically think aloud about how you take the completed graphic organizer and turn it into a story. So that's a really important piece of this. But anyway, a graphic organizer can be this simple. However, what I've found is that sometimes kids need a little bit more support than this. Like, this is still just too much for them, even though maybe, you've read stories aloud and you've talked about beginning, middle, end. Side note, it really does help if before you ask kids to use this type of organizer, you do multiple read alouds of just any book that you want to read, and you have the kids help you fill this out for the books, okay? Because that is like a great way to introduce it, and then eventually you say, hey, we're also going to use this for our writing to plan our own stories. So anyway, sometimes this is still too much for your kids, even if you've done that with like published books and story time. So what you might want to use instead is a graphic organizer that's a little bit more structured, okay? So let me hold this up to the camera so you can hopefully see it. So with this type of organizer, it's really good in that it's very broad and the kids can choose any topic that they want to. I do feel that choice is really important, but again, some kids may not be ready for this, so you may want to provide more support. What this does instead, this says the best day ever personal narrative writing planner. it has like checklist and it guides them in choosing their topics. So it says the best day ever was when I played, got a gift, swam, played a sport, just like different things that kids might think is the best day ever. It does not limit them to the items on this page. There's like a little blank one where they can fill in their own. So basically what they're going to do is they're going to check one of these off, and then there's picture supports, you know, to help them. And then they can draw little pictures in the first, next, and last little boxes. And then this thing is to help them like kind of bring the story to a close, to give them to like share, you know, like what the best part of that special day was. And so this says my favorite part was, so they can, you know, write what happened first, next, and last when they actually go to write their story. And then this kind of guides them in like wrapping up the story, because I don't know about you, but sometimes my kids' stories just like abruptly end. So this is a way to just guide them to come up with some kind of, you know, finishing conclusion type statement. So what I would do is I would model how to do this. I would just make sure that the kids know that they're supposed to choose a different, you know, best day ever. I might actually choose something that would be really specific to me so that they can't copy. But then I would model how to draw little pictures, or you could have them write words if they're at that point. And then you would have them go and fill out their own copy of this. So everybody should be kind of different, but these topics and these little pictures give them some guidance. They fill it out. That might be just one day. The next day you come back, you take this thing that you finished already, and you model how you take it and you turn it into an actual story. So this is just a starting point. You know, you're going to show them how you add more detail, and you're going to talk, hey, you know, this is a picture of this, or I wrote this. I need to give my reader more detail. I'm going to add dialogue, or I'm going to, you know, say how the characters felt or how I felt, whatever it is. You want to be really specific in your think alouds. So then that becomes a piece of writing. They can go back, take their own planner, and turn it into a story. So again, the way that this is different from just something like this is that it is more specific, right? You're kind of guiding them. It's supposed to be the best day ever, whereas this can be used with anything. Okay, so this would be like a personal narrative, small moments type structured graphic organizer. This can be super, super helpful also with English language learners and special education students who need a little bit more like guidance and focusing in versus some of your kids who can just kind of have at something like this. Okay, another structured graphic organizer that I want to show you, and by the way, these both come from this set of structured graphic organizers that I have in the Learning at the Primary Pond Teachers Pay Teachers store. These are just 2 examples. There's a lot more in there. So this one is for writing fairy tales, and fairy tales are so much fun for kids. But again, sometimes we need just a little bit of structure. What I like to do is actually start the unit by talking about elements of a fairy tale. Oh, let's read this fairy tale together, and we're going to map who are the characters, what is the setting, what is the problem. So you kind of like do that before you go into this. And then, of course, you could always use this, but this is a little bit more specific. This story is about there's like different characters. They can also add their own. It takes place here. And then there's like right here, you can see there's small boxes to write a sentence about first, next, and last. What you could do if your kids want to draw is you could use this, but then give them something like this so that they have more room to draw. This particular organizer would just be for, you know, like students who are going to write a sentence, and then when they turn it into an actual piece of writing, they really expand upon that sentence. Okay, so of course this all requires a lot of modeling, and the goal is for you eventually to be able to give them, you know, like a graphic organizer that's very, you know, broad and they can use for any topic. I like to keep graphic organizers that look like this, obviously on a sheet of paper. I'll keep copies in like a paper organizer in our classroom. So then once they're at this point, you can even do it with this too, but once they're at this point, then every time they're going to start a new story, they go to that paper organizer, they take out one of these, and they just plan on their own. But again, especially in K2, sometimes it takes us a little while to get there. So that's why I love these structured graphic organizers for getting them to the point where they truly can be more independent in planning their writing. And that, in my opinion, is the secret to narrative writing, because yes, there's other things that they may struggle with and you can work on, but if they have a solid plan, is more conducive to them actually having somewhat of a plot, somewhat of an interesting story, which again can be so challenging in K2. If you haven't told me yet that your students find it challenging, don't forget to leave me a yes in the comments. All right, so there is actually a lot more that I would love to share with you about teaching writing in the primary grades. I do have this free webinar. It's longer, more in depth, an hour. You get some freebies. There should be a link in this video so that you can get to that free webinar. Again, totally free to register. Thanks so much for watching. I hope this was helpful. Don't forget to hit like, subscribe, and I'll see you in the next video.